Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
Our guest today is Alex Gerli, and obviously I'm Michael Cole, and we've got my co-host Matthew Cravat with us. Today's topic, in addition to this being our test case for live stream, so if you're listening later on and this sounds a little wonky, I'm going to try to cut all the stupid shit that comes with the streaming out, but we're testing out some
cut all
stuff.
the stupid shit out, there will be no podcast.
There'll be no podcast.
I know.
Okay, I'm done.
All right.
And Alex, I like when you point at one of us, because I think where people are positioned on the screen is randomized, so we all see it differently.
I'm just gonna go
to me,
this guy.
Well, on my Facebook live stream, I'm below the two of you, so you're
I can see that. Yeah.
Side.
All right. So today's topic is the evolution of the English language, or the evolution of language itself. We all speak English, so that makes the most sense. But as you know, a lot of this evolution concept, I think it works across the board. So
I think this is bullshit, because I don't believe in evolution of language. God created language 6,000 years ago, and it hasn't changed.
And there's no need to change it.
No.
It's done.
It's perfect.
All right. Well, that was it. That was the whole thing. That's the fun part
guys,
about
we're done.
live.
Thanks for coming on.
Like the
Appreciate
video
it.
and subscribe.
Is everyone's going to get to hear my crappy jokes that I usually cut out? And all right, well then we're all done with the topic. All right. So I showed Alex a list of the topics that I had that I've been waiting on for us to do, and that was the one that seemed to work the best. And obviously, Matthew, you've said a couple times you were an English major, and I have
was once 30-something years ago.
Yeah. So, who wants to start us off with some thoughts? I can tell.
Language is a virus, says singer Laurie Anderson.
Okay.
So this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, because I have conflicted feelings on it. Because as someone with a degree in English, I'm well aware that language evolves. I mean, I've read Beowulf in Old English, and I've read Shakespeare and Milton and Canterbury Tales. So yeah, obviously it evolves. I've read 20th century literature from the beginning of the century and the middle and to the end, and obviously language evolves. But it's frustrating when it evolves around you.
Sure.
And especially, I think it evolves faster now than ever before. I think because the internet, especially when words that have jargon meanings get to the mainstream and stop having their specific meanings, and the meanings get blurred and sometimes unintentionally, sometimes intentionally by bad actors. I want it to mean the old thing, because the old thing was better. But I'm also aware I'm not going to win that fight, so I'm not going to have semantic arguments with people. So I know Mike doesn't want any anti-semantic jokes on the stream.
So I agree with you on the fact that it is evolving faster than ever. However, that's in one way. In another way, it is kind of going slower. So when I was learning, one of my classes that we learned about linguistic half-lives and how you go from a dialect to an individual language.
Let me just stop real fast. Mike has a master's degree, so he knows more than we do.
I specifically didn't say anything about my master's degree because I didn't want you to give me shit. When this was actually, I'm pretty sure this was undergrad anyway, this class that I took. But we were talking about half-lives and basically from Shakespeare's time to our time right now, under normal technological, by Shakespeare's time standards, we would be in a different language fully than Shakespeare is right now. It would be considered a different language. The last 130, 140 years have kind of changed the evolution of language, because we speak the same language as Britain. We would not if we had not had the radio and the television and talkie movies, because we are so separated otherwise that it would be more similar to what Portuguese and Italian are to each other, and then English to just a different dialect of English.
Yeah.
And so our English didn't have as much time to diverge because we share too much pop culture.
So it is evolving, like you said. That is correct, in at a faster rate, because because things are getting quicker with the internet. We learn a new language, we do learn new terminology. It becomes dated quicker because people, the uncool people start using terms like Riz, like you were both just saying earlier, and then people go, oh, I don't want to fucking use Riz anymore. But on the other hand, we are not. We are is less likely to take English and British English will not separate in the time that they normally would have. We would be pretty damn close to that had we not had the
it would be more like Canadian
broadband,
French, Quebecois and French, where
Yeah.
Canadian French sounds more like Shakespeare. I mean, it's more archaic because it froze in time while French evolved more quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
And
to go back to my evolution joke, it's like macroevolution versus microevolution. Like we're not having what they call now macroevolution of changing languages, changing like species.
Right.
But within this English, the words change meaning every year.
Yes. Yeah.
And in my experience in working with a lot of Europeans when I was in the food and beverage industry is that Americans and Europeans, we all push away that other outside language as this silly thing that I'm not going to engage with. Why can't you just speak what we speak? Has sometimes been what I've heard. But then at the same time, there's always this sense of vogue for the new terms and the new, I guess, even voicing of something. And then there's the mine is just the best. So your example of actually, I had a direct experience with Quebecois or the rest of Canada as I worked in a restaurant in Montreal for my internship, and I worked under Martin Picard, and he is a Quebecois in and out. So he is a proud French person, like Canadian French person. It's so different that he will speak French around people who speak English just to show us, just to give him a sense of superiority. And then
he speaks an inferior language to feel superior. That's weird.
Hey, I said what he thought he was doing. But
I say that mostly because I have a lot of friends in France who listen to the pod because I work for a French company. So
heck yeah,
hear me say that.
Well, and I'll give an example of the vogueness, right? So even in some industries, there are situations where using a certain even unit of measure or method of speaking or voicing of a sentence
like
or an
saying
email.
Food and beverage instead of food and drink like a normal person would.
Wow. So yes, but also like I insist that everything be measured in this house in metric because I spent so long in that industry. I think the imperial system is a joke. Everything about it is more difficult. Why not just weigh in grams? It's a base 10 system. It just makes more sense.
Are you just like outing yourself as a drug dealer? Is that what you just did?
I am not going to tell you what I use the gram scale in the kitchen for, but it's just the idea that as someone with the master's, because this is actually something I'm interested in, because I had a classics professor for a grandfather. Is there a big drive of that vogue or interest or the new shiny when it comes to language? Or is it more because it's such a basic need for human communication? It's more slow to take on the new terms, and it's really only the young hip crowd that are using those very edge kind of phrasing.
Honestly,
well, that was for Matthew. That wasn't for you, Mike.
He has the master's. I have just a bachelor's. He's smart.
But no, I really want both of you to give an idea of that, like because language is so basic, we need it to function.
That's not what it doesn't mean that what you think it means, because now basic means bad. So
true. Good segue. No, but because it's such a regular. Now you have me trying not to say basic, because it's such a basic human need and it's so necessary for our day-to-day communication. Did you all in your learning of language, was it, oh, the new edgy terms are kind of slow to take because it's a situation where I'm afraid that if I'm not able to communicate, I won't get what I need, or even worse, I may be in danger? Because I've traveled internationally and they will faster speak English to you than their native language when they know you speak English. And yes, that may be for financial or other gain, but at the same time, that's what they choose to do. They don't try to make me learn it.
English is the lingua franca, ironically.
Yeah, oddly enough, it's true. So what's your experience, Mike?
I don't know what lingua franca means. I know that Matthew likes to throw my
The guy with the bachelor's is like lingua franca.
No, I understood within the context.
It's like
after
the
Matthew
language
makes so
that's
much
used for international business and the common tongue that people can share.
I do know what it means.
You stupid little mook.
Yeah.
But oddly enough, it's the metric system that's the measurement.
Okay, off topic slightly, but the metric system. I did watch a YouTube video in the last because of pirates. Matthew saw it. In the last couple of days, there was a Instagram video that I saw explaining why we don't use the metric system in America.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because pirates, that when they were sending over the metric weights or whatever, it must have been weights, couldn't have
The
been
official, units of everything.
Manifests,
they were lost to pirates, and basically America was like, well, we're not doing that shit again.
Now that we started, we don't change.
Yeah.
Sounds American.
It happens a lot with things that were British at the time.
Yeah.
And we kept it and they didn't, and then they scowled at us for it, like metric system, like doing month, date, year.
Oh yeah,
that was British when we were founded as a colony. Then they changed and we didn't, and they're like, why do you do it different? It's like we copied you. We learned it from watching you.
Was there, because the history of food is very, very fascinating to me, and I always saw different ingredients shift their prominence in a culture, like spicy things, sweet things, spices, seasonings. Like these used to be the aristocrats only could afford them, right? So when America was in its infancy, was there a situation, I wonder, where there were people rebelling as hard as they could against the patriarchy, that they wanted to be different, they wanted to be this free country and nation, but then at the same time, like you just mentioned, Matthew, it's all of this, oh well, we did it because you did it. We did it because we're trying to duplicate the mother country, and it almost got this bad taste in our mouths that freedom was everything and we must press on and change the way we have done it for what might have been a century by then.
Yeah.
I'm going to pretend I know what you said, but my internet went out for a while, so everything.
Okay, I was wondering because you just looked like you were like doing this, and then I pulled it up on the stream on my other one, and you were going on that, and you weren't going on that.
There's a delay on the stream,
which feels backwards. It feels like it should be. No, I think that there's probably something to that, Alex, but I don't know that much about it. I mean, I have a tendency to think when it comes to a lot of things that are American specifically, is that we dig our heels in and we are, this is the way it's done, like we can't change this because we are uniquely free, we are uniquely great, we are uniquely regardless of evidence or anything else, but we
experience. I've never been to any other country, and that's why I know we're best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never used any other. Well, it's also funny that with things like changing from imperial to metric is unless you use metric, the change is so painful because it's not intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
When you've learned one system, like I think in inches, I don't think in centimeters. Like multiplying everything by 2.54 doesn't make sense in my head. Like
when you tell someone that you are 9 whole centimeters long, nobody understands that that's not as impressive as 9 inches.
No, but when I'm talking to my work colleagues, before I met them, I was like, I'm 6'4" tall. So I would have to Google what that is in centimeters to tell my French colleagues how tall I am, because they can conceive seeing just me on the video screen how tall I am. Yeah. And then even when I went there, I have a female colleague who's 6 foot here in the U.S. and she and I, wherever we went,
what is she?
The greeting we heard from everybody was, "You're so tall. You're so tall." We were just hysterical laughing because that's the only thing people would say to us the first 5 minutes they met us. They just stare at us, how tall we are.
Yeah. And then you can throw in the measurements of like stone, like for weight.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, I don't have a fucking clue what
England's
you're
got
talking
everything. They use imperial and metric and
And metric.
old
Yeah.
oldie stones and stuff. in
ye
hands.
olde stone. So I like for me the language part of it is I'm I'm even curious on like I was mentioning with like herbs and spices being only for the aristocracy, but then
That's why
it
white
be
people don't season.
right. And I was just about to mention there is so much historical accuracy to the way spices and seasonings changed over time with their availability and their cost, that when the commoners started to use them, the aristocracy flipped the script and is like, no, we're going to have plain food now. We're going to let the ingredients speak for themselves. So I'm curious if there's any precedent to language even going that way. So, for example, the derivation of like the Boston accent has a lot of roots in Old English or Colonial English or British in this case, and I'm thinking, okay, so did the commoners truly speak in a drastically different way than the wealthy or the upper crust or upper class would? And is now in 2024, is there more homogenization?
I mean, if you
Or
go by
do I not even
modern,
notice the difference?
but if you go by modern London, and you go by Cockney versus aristocracy, there's a huge difference.
Yeah,
So if
there
that
is.
was the same difference then,
True.
you can see where the
I,
people who
I heard that
came
dropped
over.
H. I heard that dropped H. I heard.
Okay, but if you think about
I'm gonna get on the phone with someone from Brooklyn for about 5 minutes so I can get my Brooklyn on, and the whole accent can just be incomprehensible to my Southern friends.
I grew up
Nice.
in Brooklyn. Only one of the two of us will understand you. We'll be good.
Now, Mike's multilingual.
Back to the Boston accent, which
The
I
expert.
understand. This is a funny topic for you to bring up because I've been for the last month or so I've been joking with people random people that
On the street.
no, just like when it's come up randomly. It's a real. When I tell you the story, you're gonna go, "How the fuck has that come up several times?" But it has.
Because you've made it come up because that's your
He comes in and he goes, I had so much trouble parking my car.
parking my car.
Oh, let me mention the Boston accent. And he's
Top
like,
of
it's
the
just so
tray.
random.
I'm gonna
No,
put this on the top of the
random.
tray.
This is a Boston accent. Random. What are you talking
I don't know.
about?
I'm trying to figure out another word to do in that part of the sentence.
Just start
Deal with
dropping
it.
your H's.
Nobody knows. We don't understand what the hell you guys say anyway. We don't listen. Once we hear the Red Sox are a good team, we just stop listening.
Oh God, you and I are friends now.
And I can mute you both. Anyway, so I was talking about the book Little Women, which I have not read. I've not seen either of the movies.
Either of the movies, like there's only been two?
Either of the movies that have come out in my lifetime. The big ones. But it's funny because I know a decent amount about it. I've
done enough crossword puzzles. I know all the names.
I lived I lived close to where it takes place, and I said to someone recently that when you talk about Little Women, it's interesting because like we don't know when the Boston accent started. So whenever you see it in movies, you hear either a very basic American or a vaguely British, like upper crust British accent, when it could be, what is it, 1850s? Takes place 1860, something like that. It could very well have been closer to a Boston accent than either of the accents we're kind of mentally associating it with, which would be fucking hilarious to be like, "Hey, Joe March over here." Like, I just think that's so funny, and I want someone to produce that version of Little Women.
So when I was
and it's
in college at the university, when I took one of the classes I had was contemporary lit, but something American lit, but it may just been American lit. We read Maggie Girl the Streets by Stephen Crane of Red Badge of Courage fame, 1893 novel about an Irish girl in Brooklyn, right? Or in New York, maybe Lower East Side, so maybe Manhattan, maybe Lower East Side, but whatever, in New York. And my professor used to make me read out loud because it was written phonetically with strong New York accent.
Oh, okay.
So he had me read it because I could do the accent well versus my mostly Southern classmates.
Oh my god! So just back to language or back to accents for one more second before we move back to
I was
language.
just talking about accents.
Derailing.
We had not gone anywhere.
Der-
We were still in accents.
This is talking about derailing podcast. So when we're talking about accents, so someone at work today was telling me a story about a guy that she went to college with, master's degree, Matthew, and that he was a young man who was in like some social justice or some kind of social justice style class. Very progressive guy, had the accent of Foghorn Leghorn, and I said, "That is amazing. I want to be there.
I'll say.
I want to hear him talking, defending trans rights in that accent. I think that'd be so amazing.
Ah,
I would prefer it if you would use the correct pronouns for my
Correct
colleague
pronouns.
here. They have said more repeatedly that they want to be called they, them, and you have denied
You
them
have
that.
chosen.
I mean, it is for comedy's sake. There's nothing better than playing. Well, there maybe is, but one of the great things. I don't want to say nothing better than doing an accent and playing the character against type.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when you know, but when you know that that's based on a real person, like, oh, this person sounds like Foghorn Leghorn,
Oh yeah.
but is progressive. That just, I want to be friends with that person. Like,
Yeah.
I want that person in my life.
I mean that, or like the other completely backwards, like Elmer Fudd making a cooking show.
Yeah.
Yosemite Sam knitting. Stuff like that.
Food and beverage.
Food and beverage.
Add in the butter.
So because accents are such a large part of language, I've been curious in the longest time for the longest time about how a lot of them seem to have evolved. Like even the accents have evolved, but there's not always been as much welcome to that change. And as a person who has only ever researched dead languages or languages no one likes to speak, it's often been something where I'm almost taking this class as like a weird nostalgia for a time I was never alive,
Yeah.
Greek or Latin, for example. But then you have me working in Canada amongst a bunch of Frenchies.
Latin America, they speak Latin there.
Only the American flavor one. But it was so different to like hear people yell at me in French. Hear people yell at me in French, and then because there's also the idea of learning languages vicariously or because you're a blank generation of that specific dialect, as opposed to learning it in a more structured academic fashion like I learned Latin. It always felt that my understanding of French is so conversational and guttural and rude and aggressive that's the only French I know. So I can't go into common public and ask for a beer and not be calling someone a prick at the same time. So it was always so different to hear like my grandparents speak Italian, and I could barely speak a lick of it because my parents and their parents were so against speaking that language that they did when they emigrated. So it was so much of this "you will speak English in this house" kind of a flavor. So I can read a little bit of Italian, but that's about it.
That's interesting, especially my family is also, like, my mom's side is my mom's half Italian.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, her father is the Italian side, and his father came from Italy. His mother is first generation American, but his grandparents on his mother's side were Italian. So they grew up around Italian. My grandfather grew up around adults speaking Italian and speaking English, but broken English, because they were either immigrants or they were freshly the children of immigrants. But and so my grandfather, I don't know how much he actually speaks. His siblings, two of his siblings, they'll tell you they don't speak. really speak English because they don't consider themselves 100% fluent. But I've been to Italy with them, and I've seen, that they're
My French friends
yeah,
apologize for their English, and you understand everything they're saying,
Yeah.
yeah,
but they're raised to think if you have the slightest accent, you're failing. So like
Right.
they think they don't speak, even though they speak
right.
better than
Oh,
people.
But then my
That is a
mother,
perfect example of it. Yes. Yes.
yeah,
The approach to language is different from country to country.
yeah.
So, Michael, yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, and I think that the immigrant aspect of it, the assimilation side of things, is huge.
Mhm.
Like my grandfather, I think if you look at my grandfather's 4 siblings that I knew, they are different degrees of, and it's partly based on birth order, but partly based on gender and a whole bunch of other things. They are varying degrees of American first, Italian second.
Matthew, when you were mentioning that when they have the slightest accent, they apologize or they think it's a sign of failure or poor business communication. I have not experienced that myself because of my bilingual or trilingual even household growing up, but I have experienced it with other Americans communicating with, say, the European folks where I work. We will butcher their words and maybe feel a little bad about it, but just let it go. We will get like excessive, what feels to us excessive apologies, like you just
Yeah.
mentioned. Oh, I'm
But I
so
mean, to
sorry,
us,
I
it's like
butchered
if you
your
understand what
BS
I
state
mean,
name.
I got my point across.
Yeah.
And to them, if it's not poetry, it was a failure.
Yes.
Well,
And that is that I wonder if that's culture specific,
Oh, well, I mean,
age
with the French,
specific.
it's very cultural. That I mean, the way French people raise their children is they expect perfection or it's failure. Like there's no,
Yeah.
yay, you did a great job. It's you did what I expected
Mhm.
you to do, or you failed. And that's the same way in business. Managers expect everything to be perfect, otherwise it was a failure.
Yeah.
I mean, not for everyone 100% of the time. Obviously, no culture is a monolith, but
Right.
in general, that's the general feel.
But I think if you flip flop that example and you say, okay, we're all Americans, and somebody who is English second language comes in, and unless it like I've met people who are understandable, but it takes a little bit of effort to
Yeah.
understand them, and and I know that they've had difficulty with people who do not have any patience for speak American, goddammit, kind of people, and so I think it is the other side of the same coin that you're talking about, in the fact that we do have, I mean, like I hear somebody who speaks English second language and can get the point across as, I can't do that in any other language as
Yeah.
well as you can in my
Yes.
language.
That's the non-racist response, though. The other people are not.
Correct.
Yeah, they're
Right.
just being nationalists. They're not doing it because of language. They're
No,
doing it
true.
because they don't like other people.
Right.
So that is what I'm curious about when it comes to language. Is there not like completely different language to language, but in the evolution of it, like taking on these new terms or voicing or phrases, is there some fight from a conservative mindset? And when I say conservative, I don't mean political conservative, but I mean conservative in the sense that by its straight definition, I like
Well,
the way it used to be.
I mean,
You
it's.
know?
I think you can see it in the pop culture of any generation where you have the younger person saying, "Man, this is hip," and their parent in that movie is saying, "I think he means hip." And the next thing
Yeah.
it's like, this thing is cool. I think he means hip. And then we're
Mhm.
like, and then
Yeah.
Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future. Man,
Heavy.
that's heavy. Like we all. Every generation has the word that the previous generation thinks, "Oh my God, why are you saying that?" Use the word I used, which
Yeah.
their generation thought
Yeah.
wasn't.
Well, and there are definitely, just because of mindset, like you were mentioning with being nationalist, there's always the idea of some, say the three of us, may be much more comfortable or welcoming to change because as intellectuals, we know that's the way to learn. And we know that's the way to evolve and to grow our minds and our understanding. Whereas my neighbor might not think that, but will they gatekeep just as much of their little niche because I think they're 12 or 15 years younger than me. I'm 40. So will they gatekeep some of their hip new language from me because they think I'm the old stuffy fuddy-duddy who doesn't want to learn or wouldn't be interested in learning? So is the evolution of language a gatekeep?
Well, that's.
Is it
I think there's a
is
combination. I think that's why evolution is slow, not fast.
I
Yeah.
think that I'm going to disagree with you completely, Matthew. I think the reason why we're seeing so much of it speed up is because while we obviously know somebody who is like, hey, I think they meant hip, not cool, there's also the opposite. So my dad, we're going to bring my dad into this because Matthew loves my dad.
He hates
bless
me
him,
so much.
bless him.
My dad, when I was in my mid-20s, thought it was really funny to learn about new slang or whatever the cool new terms, and he would make it cringy. He would be like,
being
I was
self-aware.
Before you guys.
"Oh, he was aware. Like he was fully like he was
just the fact that he said it.
Not to make me.
So he wasn't trying. He,
No.
he meant to be like
No.
slightly edgy and cringy.
He was not trying to ruin it for us. He wasn't trying to like teach us.
Okay.
He wasn't trying to teach us that it sucks. Like he wasn't like anti the language. He just thought it was funny. So he's like, check out my new kicks, Mike. And I'd be like, oh, Dad, come on. And I think we get that not only generationally, but and I do think it goes along racial lines. I just cannot pull off cool. And a lot of black people and black language are just so cool. And then when some of their language gets to me, it's fucking done. Like it like when I'm saying a term that used to be really cool, it's
I'll just say that word on the air. I told you.
Not that word.
You can't.
No, but for example, Riz. You guys were talking about Riz before.
Yeah.
Riz. The other thing is that when people bastardize the definitions of a lot of these words too, so like they mean something in Black culture or Latin culture or.
But I think that's true
culture.
for all jargon, not just
Sure.
cultural.
Sure, but we really drill it down. So like Riz had a very specific meaning, and it's apparently been around for decades. There's examples of it being used in music decades ago. I heard about it like 6 months ago. Well, and by the time I heard about it, it was white dorks being like, that's Riz, you got Riz. And you're like, okay, that word is dead. Like, I heard about it, it must be dead.
Thanks for killing it.
Well, so before you guys were born, because I'm old, when I was a kid, the word we used for hurry up, let's go fast, was book it.
Oh, yeah.
And I say it now.
But one time, we were somewhere on vacation and we were running late, trying to get back to the car. My dad turned, and he's younger than I am now, then, and he's like, "Come on, book it, kids." And my brothers and I looked at each other. We're like, "We're never saying that word again. We're never gonna." Like he picked it up from us, obviously, because we say it all the time. But like, we're never saying it again. It's dead. He killed it.
Yeah. I wish I had just thought to say this. I had I said this to one of my coworkers in the last month or two. I said, I'm not even cool among the whites. And I said, so, and I just think that like, that is like, so when it gets to me, you're like, it's bottom rung coolness. Like
it's already done.
No, when your dad takes it from you, that's bottom rung.
No, my dad is cooler than me.
But he has cool kicks. Are you sure he's cool?
That was 15 years ago.
They were cool kicks.
What does he call them now? Skids?
No, I don't know.
Anybody?
He doesn't try
in the
anymore.
Quote? In the quote? No? Friends. So there's a lot of situations.
We have one person watching us on YouTube, and she was probably just screaming "Friends."
Yeah, she really might have been. And actually, that one person.
My daughter's watching, and she has watched every Friends episode 10 times. She has them all memorized.
When Chandler goes to work for the marketing company, he said, "Yeah, these are sneakers, but other people call them kicks or skids." And I can't get over that he says skids. And I've never heard someone call a shoe that in my freaking life. But that's okay. My wife, who is a proud North Carolinian, says tennis shoes, and I will never stop giving her shit because she does not play tennis in her tennis shoes. So they're not tennis shoes. Stop that. Stop that now.
Put it up. Put your stuff up.
Oh yeah.
First time I heard that
while you're at it.
I've never heard cut off the light till just now.
Oh, really?
What?
Right, North Carolina cut off the
No,
light.
but like
Yeah.
Saba in the last year, Saba was at work one day, and so Saba didn't grow up. She moved down to North Carolina at 9.
Yep.
And she was telling us that her first day of second grade or third grade or whatever she was in at 9 years old, the teacher said, like, put your book bag up, and she just like held it over her head, and they were like, "What are you doing?" And she was like, "You said to put it up."
But he said put it up.
She goes, "Put it in its
away
place."
would be the good
Away.
word. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I said put it away, the North Carolinians in the office were like, "You say put it away?
Away?
That doesn't make any sense." I'm like, "Away. It goes away. What if away is down? Why would you put it up?
Why would you
down?"
put it up? Yeah. So I wonder if like that Vogue kind of thing that I was mentioning, because we just gave like 2 or 3 different examples of a word being used by our superiors or our elders,
I don't have
and it
superiors.
becoming just like sacrilege to use it, or just feels so old or dead to now say it yourself. And the like where that thought even started is kind of fascinating to me. Like, was this something that came on when language came on, or was it even during the early times of communication where it was more body language and grunting and things of that nature? Was it
Dad go
mimicking someone
me
else?
no go
Right.
no more.
Me no more. No riz. Like, was it even a situation where
No
like
diggity.
no no doubt, was there even a situation where a mimicking of an action became uncool because an elder did it?
Now I'm wondering, is that an American culture thing? Do other cultures have that the way we do? Like,
Right.
I know we do,
That's
obviously.
fascinating stuff.
but do
Is
other
it
people
really
have
that? Well,
Yeah, I
okay,
don't know.
you know what? You're gonna have to go talk to your Frenchy coworkers and be like, so if your dad said this,
Hey, we could speak to our Danish and Dutch coworkers. And
yep, and Swedish.
You know what? We need to make a list of things we want to know and have one of our French colleagues, Mike, like Remy, come on.
we need to have Remy on.
and-
That would be neat.
And he's also generationally younger than, like, as much older
He's-
than Mike I am. Mike's that much older than Remy. So
I'm 10 years to the day older than Remy.
there you go.
We have the same birthday, 94 and 84.
Oh,
So-
y'all are so cute. You should have a date.
Remy's
I
very
don't-
cute, actually.
Remy's way more attractive than I could get.
There always has to be one that's more attractive than the
He-
other. And
He's a
looking at the three of us-
29-year-old. He's a 29-year-old French man who is in
wears a sweater around his neck.
yeah, he is exceedingly cooler and has smoked since he was 9.
When he was working here in the U.S. for a year, he was not allowed to meet my daughter. It's like this.
There you go. No, look, I can
And not
tell
because
that
I
there's
didn't
always
trust him.
there's always a more attractive person in a relationship. So,
I'm
Mike,
sorry, Leah.
it might just be
She's watching right now, you said? So there's no way she's not cringing right now about
Well,
Right,
that.
like-
she'll cringe in like 2 minutes when the play gets up.
when it catches
She'll
up.
come stomping down the
we'll hear
stairs.
Dad, right? It'll be delayed, Dad. So I really have always thought that trying to be, because when I was on radio, accents and characters were the shtick for me. So I was not like Hardy Boys level prank calling shtick, but I would sure do them. And language was always so fascinating to me that I would assimilate an entire character for an entire day just because I wanted to. Because to me, it felt interesting to play that other person. Like, I want to be a guy from northern Scotland today, or I want to be South African or something, right? And just try to pull it off the entire day and see how many goofs I could fool, right? And that could be just my mental illness speaking, or it could also just be that language is fascinating to me, but then maybe to others, it's such a resistant to change kind of a mindset
Yeah.
that
To,
I mean, this is stuff that I've heard spoken by my own family members, but we speak American, no Spanish here. Like that kind of stuff growing up in New York City or living in a state where there's a large Spanish speaking population. I would sooner rather learn to speak the Spanish so I can have your food because it's way tastier than the shit I got. So
I think that I agree with. Actually, I'm glad you brought up food, because I think that food is a way that we can understand it better than we we don't always get in life, especially if you're a certain type of person. You don't always get how diversity enriches.
Mm.
And I think more people than any other category of culture understand the concept of a diversity of food. And so I think that I don't like to
I don't
simplify
like foreign
culture.
food. I like American stuff like tacos and spaghetti and stuff.
Yeah, I don't like to use the metaphor too much, because I think you can get lost in like equating people with their food. But I do think that it is a good way of opening the door to, like, yeah, if you had to eat like almost any one food every day of the week, 3 meals a day, you'd be like, this is fucking terrible, like, or this is
Unless you're
boring.
my
And
father and you'd say this is life. Like
yeah,
he'll have
well, I
a
guess
slice of pizza a year, like once a year. He'll be like, I'll slice your pizza like once a year.
sure,
Otherwise,
okay.
it's meat and
And your
potatoes.
dad
No,
is
meat, chicken, potatoes.
there are
corn.
people there are people like that who, this, I don't think what I'm about to say applies to your father, but there are people like that, and they are the ones who don't understand diversity whatsoever. Your
Actually, well,
dad,
he's from New York and he understands diversity really well.
and your
Really
dad
well.
From his life in New York.
Oh, and we've heard about his ex-girlfriend and stuff, so we know that he's not the problem.
Yeah,
but like your dad is a real small sliver of humanity with the I'm excited to have the same thing every day, or happy to have the same thing every day, food wise,
Now,
and enjoy diversity otherwise. I think the opposite is more often true, where you're like, well, because
the thing is, my dad's a musician. And he's a folk musician, so he plays folk music from everywhere in the world. Like he
Sure.
loves learning a new song from even if he can't speak the language, he'll want to play backup for someone who
Yeah.
speaks. Like he met someone who sang in Swahili, and he was like, "I need to play with you. Like I can't speak Swahili, but I can play with you."
Yeah. So, do you guys ever heard of Kyle Kinane?
yeah,
He's
a
a
comedian.
stand-up. He's amazing, and he has this bit where he talks about how there's got to be some Klan members who have gotten in trouble for ordering food that they weren't supposed to have, and he's like, this General Zhao's chicken's really good," and he's like, "There's got," and it has to, because we all, I don't know if you guys have both seen. I'm sure, Matthew, that you've probably seen it because you're old enough that it would have been contemporary for you. But like the Dead Man Walking, you've seen Dead
in the
Man
theaters.
Walking? Exactly. I'm a
Stop.
weirdo that I saw Dead Man Walking at 15 years old.
I saw it in the theaters. Madhav and I were visiting California, visiting my brother Jeremy, and we were with he was engaged at the time to someone he did not end up marrying, thankfully. But the four of us went to the movies, and they were like, young and in love, and they were making out during Dead Man Walking. And it was like the episode of Seinfeld where they saw him make out during Schindler's List. I was like, how do you make out during this movie?
So there's a line in it where she, what I can't remember the character's name, but it's Susan Sarandon, says something along the lines of like, well, they talk about, I think, Martin Luther King, and he said, well, he's not all the stereotypes. And so like we know that he says it way more crassly and grossly than I'm going to use on here, but like he basically says he's not all the stereotypes. And I think we know that even vile racists like the character in that movie have this odd slivers of life that are cut out for it. And I think food is the gateway for way more than anything else.
Food is one, music is one.
Music, sure, yeah. Although music, it can be pretty diverse. What do you call it? Divisive.
I mean, both can be. I mean, like people people. There's people say that kind of music is terrible. That kind of food you don't eat. My dad would be like, "Oh, you eat the Italian food. You make you sick with all the garlic," because he doesn't like garlic. So the entire realm of a country that has, as you well know, many varieties of cuisine off the table in his head.
All those garlic eaters.
I'm Sicilian, Dad.
Name the movie. Anybody?
All those garlic eaters?
Yeah. It's the only time I've ever heard that slur used against Italian people. Don't Google it.
No, I'm curious on it now.
It's a Wonderful Life. Mr. Potter refers to
Wow.
the Italians living in his
Garlic eaters, a
hovels as
pejorative
garlic.
reference to Italian immigrants.
I've literally never heard it other than that movie, and I'm like, and I think about it, and I go like, who doesn't like garlic?
What kind of
Apparently
movie is that?
that's
I haven't heard of that one. What's that about?
It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
It is a fictional movie about an angel, so that's how we know it's fictional, who shows a man that his life, that the people around him would not be better without him having been born.
Oh, that's just copying all those sitcoms that have done that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you weren't just being facetious there, Matthew, or were you?
No, so I want him to say it's a Christmas movie, and I'm like, saying,
Oh, you're trying to get to say it's a Christmas film.
So I can say that's why I haven't seen those.
So you wanted a setup, but you were denied your setup.
I try not to give him. I try not to give him any extra help on his jokes. So
my grandfather, it's about Jewish, not Judaism. Separate the two. My grandfather left home at about 15-ish, left the town that's in Ukraine, where he grew up, to come to America. So before that, when he was 12 to 14, he was already an atheist. He had already given up on religion. And he was also like a socialist. He was like, before, under the Tsar, he was like for the revolution, when it was still an underground thing and not there yet. But he was very active. He was also very educated and very into like reading the Russian newspapers that were available, not just the Yiddish newspapers for the shtetl. And the town. And when a traveling rabbi came, he got into an argument as a young teen, adolescent, telling the rabbi that he speaks more Hebrew than the rabbi does.
Oh.
And the rabbi was like offended. And he was like, I know all the words you know. I also know the words for electric light bulb, automobile, locomotive, like all these technology things that this traveling rabbi did not pay attention to in a Hebrew word for. My grandfather knew the new words that had been created in Hebrew for this new technology. So he was learning more of the language than the elders who didn't want to learn about the new technology, or maybe they would use the Russian word more than they would use a Hebrew word for it. But a lot of the socialist newspapers were written in Hebrew, so the Russians couldn't read them.
So the Russians couldn't read.
That's why he knew those words, because he read the socialist newspapers.
I want to get, I think that's a really good transition for the topic. I think one of the things that also comes into play with language, and it's a significantly smaller way, is as we get global technology, you don't see, you see language kind of becoming, even across, not just across Englishes, from us to Australia or us to England, but across different languages altogether, you're going to see certain words merging together more often. So, for example, Facebook. We're streaming on Facebook right now, and YouTube. Both of those are comprised of two sets of words that exist in every language.
Mm-hmm.
But Facebook in Italian isn't like faccia libra; it's Facebook, and in YouTube isn't tue. I don't know how to say tube. But you understand my point. So and we're starting to get to that point, and I think especially when you start introducing slang, and I remember being in Italy the first time watching music videos, because it was some of the random stuff I could actually understand some of. Like every third video would be like somebody in English, and then there'd be somebody in Italian, and then but like some of the Italian songs were having very English phrases, and I didn't understand the concept completely. Like there was one I remember the guy saying, "Big fish, do you speak English?" And that was the whole song. Like that was like the chorus, and I was like, okay, they've started taking English words in, English phrases in. Now they're using it in a weird way. I found out later that big fish refers to, but so big fish is what they call the mafia. In Italy, and then do you speak English is very much like do you understand what I'm saying, instead of like saying do you understand what I'm saying.
Hear you say those things about me while I was gone.
Yeah, don't say that he's a good guy, Alex. You don't know him.
I wasn't speaking, out loud, was I? Oh shit.
No.
I was like, I have a story recommendation for Alex. I better get back online before they hang up.
We're gonna stay on for a few at least. I want to get at least a full hour.
Yeah.
So that if we have to cut anything out, dude.
I really think that when you mentioned the adding in of English, like straight English phrases, and having it be very much an idiom, but for us instead of an idiom for them.
Yeah.
There's almost like I've seen English put in songs as like this weird forbidden thing, kind of like Matthew was saying it was written in the other language, so the others couldn't read it. There's using English as a, like, me using it at all, even if it's wrong, is a statement in itself. But then what I said was the real meaning. So, saying someone is a big fish, right?
Yeah.
Everybody in Italy knows exactly what that meant. But you and I
Yeah.
are like, is that a dick joke? Like, what is this? So it's I remember my great grandfather saying stuff in English like not intentionally wrong, because he was so proud cock to be able to say a phrase in English and have it sort of mean what the hell he wanted to. But then even more so,
So Mike's going
he
to hate
was
me for
he
saying
was
this,
such a
but that's the
badass to
joke
even use
about
it.
Jewish jokes is.
Yeah,
It's like the joke about Jewish jokes. Every Jewish joke ends with no one laughing and saying, "Well, it's funny in Yiddish." And it's like it doesn't translate. The punchline never translates.
Right.
yeah.
Right.
I don't know. I really think the punchline, because in his example, right? He like all of the native Italian speakers that would be at like the table with him, he would seem like such a badass to them for saying this one thing in English, but then all of us were in no way impressed that you just did that. So, not only did you butcher it, but it's not funny. Like,
so here's my example joke, a short joke. A son who has a horrible relationship with his father. A son has a horrible relationship with his father. His father dies, and in his will, he leaves him 18 roosters. And he doesn't understand why. And he goes to the rabbi and says, "Why did he leave me all the money, all the land? He gives nothing to me except 18 roosters. Why?" And the rabbi says, "He left you chaykak." Oh, I should translate. Chaykak means nothing in Yiddish.
yeah.
And so 18 roosters is 18 is chai and roosters are cock. So I mean, by the time you explain it, there's nothing funny about it. But if you speak Yiddish, it was funny.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And what was interesting is I remember what he said. He was speaking ill of his sister, and his sister did not speak English. So it was almost like this bad insult to a person who in no way would have understood it. But really, I remember all the Italians at the table, all of his brothers were just like, Marco. Like they all just look at him, Marco, and he'd be like, "What? I say thing, funny, no?" And all the English speakers at the table, like all the cousins, are like, it's not what you think it means.
It's great because that's a double layer.
Yeah.
Knowing the younger English speakers won't understand it, and the only Italian speakers, you have to be bilingual.
Yep,
to get
exactly.
Like only one group.
She is the real pig fucker, right? She pig fucker.
She pig fucker.
Why?
Yes.
Why do English people look at me like I just said pig fucker?
Yeah, it was very much something like that. Like he wasn't trying to compliment her.
Built a bridge. No one calls me the bridge builder.
No one.
I saved a life. No one calls me the lifesaver. You fuck one pig.
One pig.
I love that joke. I can't wait till Logan's old enough to hear it.
Oh, I wasn't supposed to tell him that.
No. So for me, it's very much like trying to learn another language can be interesting. It can be fascinating because you're growing your mind or your understanding of something that's foreign and exotic to you. But then I actually, the food thing, Mike, how excited were all of the Danes and the Swedish who have never left the country? How excited were they to eat our boring food?
Sure, but they're not known for good food, so.
I've got some Danish.
Bowls.
Nice.
Very nice. Yes.
Nice.
A friend of mine brought it back from Amsterdam.
No. The bowls over in, the bowls there is delicious.
Yeah.
My
coworker of mine went home for the holidays and brought that
very
back.
Nice. I really think that them not being known for great food is actually, I'm not saying it's a poor statement, but it doesn't hold the weight, because comfort. I'll give you an example. So, Matthew, we had a coworker who's from Europe. He has never left the island he lives on, ever.
Manhattan?
No, over in shut up. So he's never left the island that he lives in. He lives on an island called Feen, and he pays us a visit. He rents a red Dodge Ram pickup truck, drives it from northern North Carolina all the way to DC on the weekend, because that's what you do when you visit America.
All my French friends do that. Every weekend they travel,
And
as far as they
yeah,
can get.
and it's so different because he was so excited to eat cornbread. And okay, here's what's interesting. Ready? Okay,
think
this
I
is a
know you're
fascinating
talking
Met
language.
in North
No,
Carolina?
this is a fascinating language thing. Ready? He likened Southern food, so think biscuits, cornbread, collard greens. He called it soul food. And I thought that was interesting. I was like, so do all of you associate slave culture food, which is essentially what soul food is more encompassing, and Southern cuisine and culture?
Mhm.
Are you likening this to that's how you see the South of America? And what was the other
That's
thing?
how New York sees the South of America.
It's kind of how they were.
I mean, all those foods growing up, I would have called soul food until I moved to the South and found it was just Southern
Yeah.
food, because the restaurants in New York that have it were black soul
And they
food
call it
restaurants.
right.
That's where you got that food.
So this
Yeah.
this is a pale as can be, just Danish or a Finnish guy, and he's like, "Oh no, we had soul food last night," and the rest of us in the room are like, "So biscuits and cornbread and collard greens?" And he's like, and fried chicken too." I was like, "Oh yeah, you had some soul food, all right." Like it was just so different because his country might not be known for the food, but he also said our coffee sucked. And I will tell you, Western European coffee is killer in comparison to what we usually get here, as far as the quality or the freshness.
I mean, my French and Italian friends think our coffee is just watered down
Yeah.
espresso. And like that's how they make it. A lot of places, how they make an Americano, they do a double shot espresso
and lengthen it with water.
They think that's what we brew. I think that's how it's done.
So I always thought that it was interesting to hear, because that's how I travel. The first thing I want to do is eat what they eat. And one of my favorite quotes from a person I worked with in the New York restaurant scene, when I watched Anthony on that episode say the worst way to travel is on a tour bus, because you will
They try to
never
bring you to places
understand.
they think everyone will find
Yeah,
palatable.
you'll never understand the real culture. He's like, get off the tour bus, go out and sit down on a plastic stool in the middle of an alleyway and eat something that some old bitter granny makes, and it'll be the best food of your entire trip. So that's how I want to travel, because that was my mindset and that was the perfect way to voice it. But then at the same time, I know the food I cook and I like it, but I also went to culinary school. So food for me is part of my education, but it's also part of my entire young life. So I've always wanted, but then I know so many people who the first thing they want to do when they go visit somewhere is, I want chicken tenders and like you were saying, I want some pizza and some tacos. And I'm thinking, so you really do like international food.
I travel for business, so I don't always get to go to all the smaller hole in the wall places. Like sometimes we have one day to ourselves to go somewhere, everything else. But my ordering is always, and in America or traveling, doesn't make a difference. Someplace new, I'm like, what's your favorite thing? I'll ask the waiter or the owner. Like, our best seller is no.
What do you eat?
I didn't ask the best seller. What's your favorite thing? I'll have that, and I'll have it as long as it's not fish or olives. I will have it and make it as if you're making it for yourself. Don't ask me any questions. Just make it like you're making it for yourself. And traveling and even just from a food truck the other day, there was this like taco food truck, and I asked that, and the woman's like, my Hawaiian cheeseburger. And I was like, what? It's like, not the taco, not the torta, not the quesadilla, her Hawaiian cheeseburger, and it.
Yes.
It was amazing. I was so happy I got it.
I seriously enjoy that part of traveling, and I want to learn the languages, because as a very nearly see-through pale American, they see me coming from a mile away with my American money, at least when I was in Canada, and oftentimes I wouldn't get the real local thing. So by learning the language, that was a way for me to order the real thing. And they'd be so impressed, kind of like Marco at the dinner table was, of saying the thing in their native tongue. They're like, oh, so we got to give this dude the real thing, you know?
So
I want to.
so here's a great food. Oh,
I was gonna say I want to get back with the food and language thing. I think there's an interesting thing that I want to tackle real quick, which is there are so many tiny examples linguistically of food, and I can think of two right off the top of my head, but there's multiple where in the language it means a generic, but when you bring it into America, it means a very specific version of the generic. So I'm thinking of queso, which is just cheese, but queso to Americans is a very specific Mexican
Yes.
cheese.
It's a dip. It's not even.
And then there's prosciutto, which is the Italian word for ham. But we don't. If you just bought ham and someone said this is prosciutto, I'd be like, "Fuck you, that's not prosciutto."
Yep.
Like if an Italian person said that, I might be like, "Okay, that that's prosciutto." But like, prosciutto is a different thing.
Yeah, it's a specific.
Yes, and I think that that's an interesting side of linguistics too, where we're kind of like, I don't know if that's Americans being dumb or the other language being like, Americans just cannot handle multiple meanings.
Well, part of it is businesses who import something and give it a name.
Sure.
Like that's how
yeah,
it's sold.
branding
So
can be a big
we
part of
grow
it.
up thinking
Good
whatever
point.
it's sold.
That's a great
we
point.
think. Like, what's in paella, right? So in the U.S., if you go to any restaurant, even a Spanish restaurant, you go to paella, it's usually sausage and chicken and shrimp. And then I'm watching this YouTube guy who's a chef in Spain, and he's like reviewing someone making paella, and he goes, he goes, I won't say never, because maybe you could find a place that would do that, but that's not how we do paella in Spain. Either it's a chicken paella, or it's a seafood paella, or it's a sausage paella. You don't mix the meats like that. And here's America. We got the everything one. Give me the house special with everything, and that's what we think the right one is.
Yeah, that's almost that happens too, where we like, and that's partly just the Taco Bellization of America, where everything has to like, oh yeah, you want a Choco Taco, you want to like.
Well, if you watch there's tons of videos on YouTube of Chinese people, or especially if they're in a marriage with an American, going to American Chinese restaurants and them getting dishes and me okay, try to guess what this is, and they like, there's nothing in China that looks like this, or oh yeah, there's one dish in this one
who is General
province
So
that's kind of similar. Yeah, like there's all these things that they're not even like in America. And then things like fortune cookies, which were based on a Japanese cookie, because after World War II, the soldiers wanted it, and they went to Chinese restaurants because they don't know the difference, and they asked for it. So eventually they started carrying it.
And now an entire industry's been created around it, and we all call them fortune cookies and associate them with Chinese food, which is really Cantonese
and
food.
It's only and Chinese people come in, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And even like Chinese food, like in New York, it's like almost every Chinese restaurant is owned by people from one particular province, Fujian or something. Like, so that's the style of, even when it's Chinese,
it's still Canton.
It's only one style of food.
I have experienced that, and I've experienced the same with language. And a good example was some of those other folks that visited us from Europe. Some of them are fluent in 4 different Eastern European languages that are close to each other. So we had a coworker who spoke Latvian, Russian, and Polish. And then she could even write a 4th one. And it was just, we're so impressed by this. But for those countries, when you have 2 states, let's look at it from an American point of view, when you have 2 states that are that close together that share a border, you've got to learn more than one language or how to speak it, or you're going to be screwed when you get older and you live in the Alsace region of France and you can't speak a lick of German. Like you can.
Well, it's the European, in Europe, if you speak 3 languages, you're educated. 2 languages, you're literate. 1 language, you're an American tourist.
And he is so not joking, because that is exactly the way this girl described it to me. She's like, if I couldn't speak this many languages, I probably wouldn't have had the job at an international bank that I had before here. Like she was that direct about it. She's like, no, it's a different approach to being multilingual. Whereas that whole thing we were talking about at the beginning, is it a resistance to change? Is America just so dang proud that we have our own butchered language that we think it's the bee's knees, but it's really just us being resistant to the outside influence.
Well, the reason that Mike and I are friends with our friend Remy, who we talked about, Remy was here for 18 months because my company has a program where when young professionals get their MBA, they can be paid for by the company to come here, have a job in the company here. We put up in an apartment, be given a rental car. They have MBAs, so they're coming here to do the job. You know, they're not like an intern. They're doing the job, but they're here for 18 months working in the U.S. to better their English. That's the only reason they're here. So they're here so because they can only have an MBA is great, but if you can't speak good English, you can only go so far.
That's true.
So they're here just to be immersive in English. And like you talked about going up to D.C., our friends with every weekend they go somewhere. They'd go to the Bahamas because they'll never be closer than they are now. You know, they'll go down to the Keys. People even come in for like 1 week. You know, they'll stay for the weekend and go to the Florida Keys before they go home.
Perfect example. That same guy who has literally never left his island, and he's weird because he has a pilot's license. Why wouldn't you just fly?
He could.
Right. So the second time he visited the U.S., he went on a cruise. Like the third time, is he just going to get a cowboy hat and move? He's taking a crash course. So I really think that the language, I'm probably the worst example of resistant to change of language because I wanted to learn more of them because I only thought it could just make me cooler and I'd get more chicks because I'm smart. Turns out it doesn't work that way if you're wondering. But it was just I wanted to do it just for me. What?
I think if you're actually cool, that's why I don't try that stuff because I can't pull it off.
I know I can't.
It's the same as when you see celebrities on a talk show, and they'll say who are real unique, like a unique comedian or musician, and they'll say just do what's in your heart, and you'll find an audience eventually. And you're like, no, you're talented. People who are not talented to do that fail. Also, it only works for the talented.
Also, there's some people with some really bad hearts out there.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing is, like, for every one Taylor Swift who says I was just true to my style of music until my audience, found me, there's 10,000 women who are heroin addicts because they moved out of their house and went to Nashville and failed. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's great that it worked for you, but you're amazing. That's why it worked for you.
We all can't be Taylor Swift. More of us are Amy Winehouse.
Exactly. Hey. No, but even Amy Winehouse was good.
And you're right. A sad example of this.
More of us are insert name you've never heard here.
Insert derelict fool that moved to Nashville.
Exactly.
Yeah, I completely agree with that idea. Do that big leap thing, and that's actually something that Michael and I talked about at the end of last week. Is doing something with conviction is worth 10 times more than doing something with any other thing in mind. Because
do something that you should get convicted for.
Yes, absolutely. And always make sure you have an out, which is why I have the scale in the kitchen. So always make sure that you have a genuine purpose, and the genuine people will notice your genuine purpose.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, I would think, as a New Yorker, as a city kid, I would want to go learn Cantonese just so I could go order proper Cantonese food from the Cantonese restaurant where all the white people got their takeaway. And I can tell you that I got looked at really funny the first couple times, but after that, they're thinking, oh no, this isn't a prank. This dude really likes this stuff. It's like his third time here this month. Okay. And he's paying in cash that he made himself. It's wadded up in his pocket. No, he really wants this. So it was just so different to see as a traveler to their country and then spend time in Hyderabad and want to learn any of the local dialects just because I wanted to get the real thing.
In Hyderabad.
Huh?
Hyderabad is the best biryani.
Hyderabad food is some of the best Indian food I've ever had in my entire life. I'm not joking. I'm serious. It is hotter than the surface of the sun.
Have you guys ever tried this? I just tried this for the first time, but it's called buttered chicken.
Butter chicken?
I have a coworker who, like, when he joined us and we were going to go out to celebrate and joining the team, one of the places we go, we used to go in that old group was a really nice Indian restaurant in Raleigh. And my boss asked, do you like Indian food? I love Indian food. But excellent. So we go, And my wife's from India, so
Oh,
people
no.
who aren't as familiar with Indian food are asking me, what things are on the menu and stuff. And I'm like, the waiter will tell you, but fine. And Josh says to me, "Is it okay to get butter chicken? Is that?" And I said, "That's totally authentic. That's actually a completely authentic Indian
It is.
dish. It's not. It sounds very American, but it's
Mhm.
Well,
totally
and
authentic.
it is the thing that white people order. Like,
Yeah, it's very well. So then later on, as he got, he's like, "This is great. It's the best I ever had." I'm like, "Yeah." And we're having appetizers, and he's like, "What's this? What's this?" I'm like, "I thought you love Indian food." And it's like samosa's not exotic. And he goes, "Well, I've only had butter chicken. I love butter chicken. Like that was I love Indian food. Was
Yeah.
I love butter chicken? That's Indian food."
I'll just my experience with Indian food is less than 10 years old. When I started working at a software company, we're on live stream, Matthew.
We're
On
streaming.
live.
We're streaming. We're streaming.
So I worked with a guy, real great guy, and he was like, "Have you guys tried?" We would go to lunch fairly often, at least once or twice a week, and he would be like, "Have you guys had Indian food?" And a good portion of us were like, "Not really." Like, had like a little bit. Some of us had probably tried buttered chicken. He goes, "Okay, there's a really good
Tandoori chicken, which is barbecue
Yep,
chicken,
yep.
basically." It's
He
nice and
goes,
safe.
"We're gonna go. There's a really
Delicious,
good
safe.
Indian buffet, 15 minutes or 10 minutes from the office. We're gonna go there when you guys are ready. We'll go." And he goes, "And the reason why we're gonna go to buffet is because you can try a bunch of shit. And if you take a little scoop of something and you're like, this is not what I want, you just stop eating that thing. You
Yeah.
you didn't commit to a dish." And so that was how I got introduced to it. And
Not a
I
bad way to do
tried,
it.
I mean, I still haven't tried goat because I've never had goat of any, but
Speaking of Hyderabad, goat biryani is
I was
like
about to-
one of the dishes of Hyderabad. It's
Yes.
amazing
so
when done right.
I tried a lot of I tried almost everything that was not a meat I was not uncomfortable trying. So I did everything else, and I tried the vegetable and the tofu versions, and I tried everything. And some of it was good, and some of it wasn't great. And I tried, and I liked that. And now, like, I go to Indian places and I get chicken tikka masala and garlic naan every time.
Just invented in London or maybe Scotland. They argue.
Oh, is it?
Invented by Indian
Yeah,
transplants.
yeah,
but
yeah.
it was invented
CTM is an
in
Indian
the
transplant
UK
dish.
by Indian. Yeah.
Much like a lot of Chinese food is Americanized
exactly.
Cantonese dishes
Yeah.
that was during post-war, especially in the Northeast, and you'd have American GIs come back
Yeah.
with their Asian now wives, and they couldn't make the real stuff because Americans would scoff at it, but they can make.
And they couldn't get the ingredients for most of the real stuff too. You had to do adapted
Yeah,
versions.
you really do. Yeah.
The reason I get that every time is just because if I have to eat one thing, one big portion of a thing, I want it to be that. But I prefer, it's just hard. It's harder to find good buffets around.
Right on the corner here, man. High House in Davis.
Oh, I've been there.
Where H Mart is. There's
yes,
really
the one near
good
H Mart is good.
I've been there, and it was really good. But their buffet is only certain times that
I think it's lunch. Yeah,
and they do a weekend, either Saturday or Sunday, like a lunch buffet too. But we don't do it.
Yeah, and there's a place, if you go down 55, it's a little much of a trip, like towards RTP. Right before you get to RTP, it's called Tandoori on Sedgwick and 55, and that they're at least lunch again. I worked on RTP. I had lunch there all the time, and it's really funny because they're very restaurant Northern India style food. And a mile further, there's a place called Spice and Curry that's more Southern Indian, Northern also, but some more Southern things that you don't normally see. And
sitar is really good
to me. It tastes like my mother-in-law's cooking. It was like home cooking.
Yeah.
Like when people would say, "Take me to the home cooking place," I go there, and I went there with my wife one time, and she's like, "We're never coming back here." And I was like, "What's wrong? I think it's really good." And she goes, "Oh, it's fine, but if I want mom's cooking, we can go to mom." I can cook. Cooking. I want restaurant style food if I'm in a restaurant.
Oh God!
I don't want
what you make.
That
because
is
I
why
want
we
go
to Olive Garden, because we would never make the shit they make at Olive Garden.
Exactly.
When you're here, your family.
Which and I'll tell you, the chicken tikka masala is the most common Indian food made in my house. Like that's my daughter has a recipe for that she loves making. So we'll have an Indian tomato soup, aloo gobi, so cauliflower
Oh
and potato.
God, that stuff is so good.
Curried together.
Oh, it's one of my favorite veg.
And chicken tikka masala is like a set
Yeah.
meal.
I love every
once a week.
gobi version I've ever had.
Sometimes
I'm-
you just do
I'm
gobi.
the-
I prefer. I don't really care for the potato. I prefer just
Yeah.
have gobi on
Yeah.
rice myself. But
Cauliflower's
I'm
delicious.
the only one who will eat the gobi every time, so I don't always get that in addition because it's an appetizer a lot of times. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, not as the bhaji. I mean, the vegetable. There's a curried, like aloo gobi without the aloo is cooked with spices and cooked down and then served with rice. What they usually have as this is a great story. They usually have as an appetizer is gobi Manchurian
or gobi 65.
Yeah, right, with a red chili sauce. So right before the pandemic, my wife and my mother-in-law and I went to this Indian restaurant, which closed during the pandemic. But first time we've been there, we went together, and I'm like, "Ooh, we have to get the gobi Manchurian." So we order that, and then we order our dishes. And the waiter looks at me when my mother-in-law orders it and looks over at me and goes, "It's spicy," and she's like, "That's fine." And he looks at me and he walks away. Comes back, gives us the gobi Manchurian, and we all take some and taste it. And fire flies out of my mother-in-law and my wife's ears, and they're drinking water, and they just push the platter over to me. So while he was trying to burn me out with it as the American, I have ultimate heat tolerance. And my mother-in-law eats super spicy food, but they went over the top with it. I mean, I'm assuming they went over the top intentionally because it can't be that hot all the time there. It was way too hot for that to be normal. But I ate the entire platter. I almost didn't need lunch at that point because it doesn't get too hot for me.
So I want to tell an Indian food story, a Italian.
We call those food stories in my house.
Italian food story, and then I want to just tell an Alex story real quick, and then I think we should start wrapping up.
Wrapping up.
The Italian food or the Indian food story real quickly. There's an Indian place on 64. I'm spacing out on the name of it. It's almost near Tryon, but it doesn't matter. Sarah and I went there once before the pandemic, and we went in and we ate there, and we ordered buttered chicken and tikka masala. She ordered buttered, I ordered tikka masala, and Logan probably had his own little buttered chicken or whatever, and it was amazing. Then the pandemic comes, and we DoorDash, and they cannot see us. And they sent over pure lava. Pure fucking lava. But like, Alex, you've met Sarah, but Sarah.
But buttered chicken doesn't usually have
That's
a
true.
particular heat level.
No,
to it.
but like Sarah.
I mean, chicken tikka masala, sure, you can spice
Sarah
that up.
is Sarah and Logan are whiter than me, and
so they're wusses.
and
for hot.
I mean, genuinely, like color wise, they're whiter, but also they're less spice tolerant than I am, and I don't know how spice tolerant Logan is. He was for a little while. Now he's not. Who knows? But Sarah is not spice tolerant, and so
My wife.
So next time I was like, can we order from Cilantro? That's the name of it, Cilantro, on 64. She goes, if you're gonna order from there, can you like tell them we're white?
Can you make it clear
Michael
our
Cole didn't hint
melanin persuasion?
She goes, or you can just go there and order in person. And
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to have the opposite fact. Like Mike, remember the Asian place we used to go to near work, where I'd say, I want the Dan noodles or drunken noodles. There, I get drunken noodles, level 4 spice, and then we go, no, not level 4. I'm like, no, level 4, and it was eventually she got to know me. She'd look up and go, okay, fine, you can have it level 4.
Yeah. But I remember, I think I had level 2, and I'm not spice intolerant, but I'm, especially in my 30s, I'm not like going for spice anymore either. Like I don't have a desire to sit on the toilet. Like,
I mean, I wasn't doing it like a dare. If I was trying to dare, I'd do 5, and that would be painful and hurt. 4 is just the perfect level of enjoyment.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be 3 when I started going to that restaurant. 4 was if I was in a large group and didn't have to carry on a conversation, I can get 4 and deal with the spice without having to talk, and I'd get 3 more often. But then eventually, I got used to their food, and 4 became the normal level for me. And one day I'll get 5. But as Mike and I used to say, we need to do it after work, because I don't think I can go back to the office after.
I really my spice tolerance drastically changed when I got older. I used to be deathly afraid of spicy food, and then after culinary school, I crave it. Like I want spicy things because I like that sweet and the capsicum, like the heat flavor, the way they get along with each other. I want that because
Give me a Scotch bonnet and I'm happy.
yes,
I'm the opposite.
so many cultures. It's a defining part of the food, and
Mhm.
it's a balance thing. So if you take out the spice, you end up with something too sour or too sweet. Like it needs that other
Mhm.
balance there to be a fully realized and rounded dish. And my wife, who can't have spicy food for the life of her, does not like high alcohol content, spirits or drinks. I'm the exact opposite. I want it spicy, and I like higher levels of spirits. And like you, Matthew, it only came over time. So
I'm the opposite. In my 20s, I was fine with spice, and
then you got
actually,
married
really,
and became a wuss.
no, I don't think it had to do with my marriage. But no, and I can still take spice. It's just that I'm going to be sweating, and it's not necessarily enjoyable. I'm not having a conversation if I'm wiping my nose. I have an additional story to the three I just mentioned that I'm going to bring up because we're talking about spice.
Yeah. I didn't know I liked spice until I was like 35 and I was working with a marketing team and we went out. We were in Chicago and we ordered a giant platter of
Yeah.
wings, and I avoided spice.
Me too.
And I was like, what will make me look worse if I don't eat them or if I eat them and they're too hot?
Yeah.
And I finally reached in and took one and I ate it. I'm like, oh, thank God they're not really spicy. And I'm like, boom, 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 flying through. I got a stack of bones and everyone is staring at me. And I'm like, what's wrong? And they were like, how can you eat so many so fast? I was like, oh, are these
They're
spicy?
like, yeah.
Oh, like it's like it doesn't matter. I like hot foods. I mean, I do, but if like what I consider not spicy, someone else considers spicy. Like I don't even taste the spice until a certain level.
Yeah.
So I was like so excited to discover I like spice. And
Mhm.
I had another coworker who used to get sick from wings when he was younger, and then like in his 30s got his ability to eat wings back yet. So we found every wing place near RTP, like we would find and eat them.
Heavenly Buffaloes.
Tell your story, Mike.
Heavenly Buffaloes. That place is so good. It's a Durham place originally, but they have one closer to one side of Durham.
So
Yeah.
Clouds in Raleigh, Clouds Brewing,
Clouds Brewing. Yep.
they have great wings.
Mm-hmm.
And I like their, I think they're called Thai Dragon or something wings, and I love them. They're the spiciest ones on the menu, and I really enjoy them. I took some friends to the Durham Clouds
Mm-hmm.
because we were in Durham for something else, and then they wanted the beer wall, and
That is the better one of the two. The Durham.
the Durham one. Oh, I think that the Raleigh one I love.
Only one of us can be right, and it's not you.
So I got the Thai Dragon wings, and they were just next level spice. and I'm like, while they're drinking, and I go into the bathroom, and I'm not minding it, but what I do is I eat it all. I'll just eat the entire thing.
Yes.
Like, I'll eat everything. Then I'll wipe up the napkins. Yep. Then I go wash up because then I'm not like trailing sauce everywhere, but I wipe up a little bit with the napkins.
Yes.
Go in the bathroom. So I'm in the bathroom and I'm washing and like wash my hands thoroughly. Then I start washing my face, and I'm like, well, I'm doing it. And these two guys,
you might need my scale.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's where the story's going. These two guys come out of a stall together, and they're like, "You got Coke, bro?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Don't hold out on us, man. We can." Why are you sniffing like that? I'm like, I had really like my eyes are like bloodshot, and I'm sweating.
Sure.
And I'm like, and they're like, "Don't hold out on us." And I'm like, I swear to you, I do not have Coke. I have never seen Coke.
No, these are real heart palpitations. This is not induced.
This is the Dragon Wings. This is way worse than Coke.
I'm riding the wings. Are you chasing the dragon, Mike?
Okay, so I would do want to wrap up quickly, but I do have two little really quick stories. So the first is I'm sure I've told one of the two of you, but I don't know. I may have told both of you. So when I was going to Italy the first time, my aunt, my grandfather's sister, she was the one bringing several of us, and she said, "I want you to research some stuff that you will want to see in Italy." This was 2009, just to give you a little time stamp in there, so you have an idea. And she's like, "I want you to research some stuff that you want to see, because I know that like I was going just myself, and then my cousins were going as a group with me." And so she's like, "You're kind of the odd man out. I want you to pick some stuff so it's not just what they want to do." because they were little kids, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So I see her at the next thing a month later or whatever, and she goes, have you given it any thought? And I said, yeah, there's this place that I really want to see. She goes, oh, what's it called? Or what is it? And I said, well, it's this place in Italy where the chefs go to learn how to cook. And she goes, ooh, that sounds cool. What's it called? And I said, the Olive Garden. And she says, Michael, don't joke about that again, or you're not going to Italy. And that was, I thought, Alex, I could have sworn you would have known from that, because that was their tagline in their stupid ads.
Yeah.
15 years.
But they would show, the commercial would show their chefs being trained in Italy, making fresh pasta.
In their perfectly white whites, which they never, ever look
no
like
tomato
that.
sauce stains.
Right, no sauce stains, no yellow edges, none of that's real.
Yeah.
Now, my last story that I wanted to tell, this is super duper quick, and this is for you, Matthew, because Alex not only hurt...
Because I knew the Olive Garden story. It was on an earlier podcast.
But Alex and I were at lunch. This is just me bragging about how quick I can be sometimes. But Alex and I were at lunch with...
Yeah, Sarah complains about that.
We were at lunch about 3 weeks ago with my new boss when she was starting her first day. And Alex was talking to her about... Because you've been here, what, 6, 7, 8 months now?
Yeah,
something like that?
Started in May.
Yeah, so he says, he goes, yeah, the welcome crew, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, well, Mike, you were there the day that I started. And I turned and I said, I'm going to be there the day you finish. And Alex knows how to take that joke. But my boss and her boss, who are both brand new, both were like, all right. And Alex thinks it's funny, I can tell.
I enjoyed it. I was like, oh.
But the mood at the table was considerably darker. Yeah, it was amazing.
That went over like a Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. All right. Any last thoughts on language?
I do have one. If you guys have not read it, and if everyone listening to the pod or watching the stream have not read it, you should read David Sedaris' short story, Jesus Shaves. So we were talking about like foreign language and language things. Jesus shaves, as in shaves his beard. I mean, actually, if you go on YouTube, I'm certain you can find audio recordings of him reading it. I know he did it on multiple places like This American Life. And,
one of my favorite radio programs.
So, and actually listening to him actually say it may be better than reading it, because he reads his stuff really, really well. So, David Sedaris, nice Raleigh boy. He was from Raleigh. My old boss lived on his block, friends with his. And so David Sedaris, Jesus Shaves, is a great wrap-up of this language issue and cultural differences in David Sedaris style. I
want to say something similar, which is almost any George Carlin from 1970 to 1990.
What about an AI George Carlin from this week?
Oh, did you hear AI George Carlin? I haven't heard it.
Oh, it's all. Just Google it. It's all over.
It's interesting.
The place. I'm both terrified and
terrified.
Yeah. Being scared is the better response.
His daughter wants to sue for the rights of his image.
You know? Yeah. No. I mean, the man is kind of my hero. I don't want to know. Especially,
it wasn't good. No. You won't be like,
you're never gonna.
He cannot be replaced by AI.
No.
Your
but his thoughts on language and the way he played with language and talked about language shaped a lot of the way I think about it. So I at one point earlier, and I forget what we were talking about, I was like, oh, there's a perfect George Carlin bit, but I don't want to like butt in on this right now. And so, but yeah, George Carlin's language stuff is always some of my faves.
Yeah, his language shit is good.
Yeah.
So,
your stuff,
his stuff, and his
your shit is stuff, and other people's stuff is shit.
I really think that my final, because I've always approached language from that of travel or trying to expand my learning. Xiaoma NYC, so XIAO MANYC.
Yeah, he's the best.
Yeah, he is a young kid. I think he's in his 30s now, mid 30s.
Young kid. Yeah.
He's
a nice Jewish boy from.
He is. Yep. He's a Jewish kid from New York. Yeah. His goal and his entire online content career is making videos of him learning, and I mean genuinely learning, a new language, just to go use it with the native speakers and their reactions are like what mine was when I first went to that Cantonese place. Like, are you here for a joke? Like, what are you doing? And then after he continues to speak to them, they there's such a look of joy and acceptance that can't be replaced with anything else. That
Yeah, he
genuine
started out from doing
reaction.
Chinese, and then he started learning every other
Yes,
language. Like he goes to different Indian restaurants and speaks the language of
that
that
specific
restaurant. And he
dialect.
goes to a Jamaican
Hmm.
place and he's talking. He goes to a Nigerian place. He speaks their language.
There
Yeah,
was
it's
even
really amazing.
he went to Pennsylvania and spoke like real
The
Pennsylvania
Amish.
Dutch, and they were like, "What?"
Yeah,
So the level of joy that these people have is so irreplaceable because it's so genuine, and there's so much excitement to go from "Am I being trolled?" to "Oh wow, you really put some effort into this." And I like
we
watching
can
his
make friends across any culture
Yes,
because you speak my
just
language.
like food does. And actually, most often, he is doing things with food. He's ordering at a restaurant, like you were mentioning, Matthew, or he's shopping at a market and he's asking for these indigenous ingredients in the proper dialect. And it's so exciting to watch that
Yeah,
happen.
he does it half as practical joke-ish, like look at the reaction
Yeah.
when this guy speaks perfect, but half making the
Yep.
connection. And
Eh,
yeah, and it's always funny when he's in Chinatown in New York and people will come in and ask to take selfies with him because they recognize him. Young people will, and everyone on the street's like, "Why are they taking selfies with
taking
him?"
selfies with this white kid. Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll be like everything behind him. Every sign behind him will be in Chinese, but he's just like this super Jewish looking white kid, like taking selfies with fans now. Yeah, I've probably watched him for a good 5 or so years now, and I genuinely think the content's like top notch stuff. So XIAOMANYC, go find it.
I'll add it all to the show notes when
Nice,
this goes out. This will go out a week and a half from now.
fantastic, gentlemen. It was a pleasure. I hope this is not my last. Matthew, it was a pleasure to meet you, and Mike.
Pleasure media. Alex, do you have any public facing art or or
Well,
blog or anything you want to plug, or any third party thing? Like you don't have anything for yourself, but you want to plug
I
something
have
else?
an IMDb page. No, I've
So do I. So does my
right. Well, no, my IMDb page started back
So
in
that means we'll tag you on our page for the podcast.
mine started back in 2009 because I spent a lot of time in the into music when I was younger. So
go ahead and Google my name and Thomas the Tank and see what it says about me in the Thomas the Tank wiki.
okay, no, but I mean, plug anything? No, not specifically, because really, right now, at my age and online presence, I'm either going to completely reinvent or I'm going to stay under the radar. That's kind of how I look at it. I've been on podcasts, I've been doing music production, I've done audio for video production. Like it's so different to have all these creative things. And my uncle, rest his soul, always said, "Don't make your like talent and fun your job, because then it makes it a job." So I've always tried to, after I got out of the food and beverage industry, I never wanted to do something that I'm passionate about again.
Food and drink.
Listen, you know what's funny? Speaking of language, over in the UK, it's the drinks business. They call it the drinks
Maths.
business. They don't say
Oh, we didn't even get
spirits or
into
bars, it's the drinks business. So it's just different.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Before we sign off, I want to just say
This episode's brought to you by
the letter F.
Ooh.
If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe and ring the bell, especially if you're watching right now live, because I think we're going to be doing live streams every week. And so you'll get to catch the next live stream, and you will be getting content that even our patrons will not get.
That's
on the
true.
edited version.
Make sure you make a comment below, because then that puts the stream into more people's feeds.
Of course, this is when it goes out.
Yeah. If you're listening to us on Apple, please hit follow and follow us. Give us a 5-star review. If you want to hit the subscribe button, for $3 a month, you'll get bonus content, which will include clips that get cut out of the regular feed, and as well as getting it 4 days early.
And if you're listening to it on any other podcast player, follow or subscribe, however they do it. If there's a thumbs up or a rating, give us a good rating on that. And if you want some of that sweet, sweet bonus content that the Apple users get for $3, go to patreon.com/talking about the big stuff. There you'll find a $3 option or a $10 option, which has content of things that if Mike's family ever hears, he's disowned.
Yeah.
I've already been disowned. And then lastly, because this is just live stream, so if you're watching right now on Facebook, because we don't nothing. I mean,
I'm gonna tell you right now.
But if you're watching on Facebook, please like the Facebook group, because we will be live streaming on Facebook again next week.
Yep.
And
We will.
And we will be trying to reach out to as many of you as possible, and we really appreciate any likes, comment on stuff. You'll also get updates about when the episodes come out on the Facebook group. So yeah, like that as well. That would be great. All right, Matthew, you got anything?
I just want to say to everybody that took this ride with us, gracias por hablar sobre cosas importantes nosotros.
No soy.
Speak now. Do it in American. Goddamn it!
Thanks for talking about the big stuff with us.
I've never had a good comeback after one of your lines, and I still haven't. The preceding podcast has been a Chocolate Diamond Media LLC production. Copyright 2023. All rights reserved.